All right. All right, before I throw you in. Okay, has everybody watched Billions before? Yes. Billions? Do you know how Axel Rod has his Wendy? Do you guys know Wendy? Yeah. So Wendy is kind of like his left hand who's able to help him be this badass human to take on the world in the investment world. And when I look at my life and how I built this business, my work experiences, I needed a team behind me. And there were so many roadblocks. We talked about this, right, Huss? And Matt, we talked about this in being leaders. We need a team of advisors to help us. Who helps us? And Candace, you brought this, you spoke about this, as well as Erica, in terms of our board of advisors, our life advisors, who are the people that help us during those critical moments. And when I look back at like my journey in growing this business and in my own personal life journey, who was my team? And so when I ask you guys that question, these two individuals come to mind. And I was so grateful to have met Jen a few years back in Dubai during my own personal life journey when we met through Mind Valley. And she said, well, you need to meet my husband, Ryan. I said, okay, why? And I started working with Ryan about a year and a half ago. And I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, what am I doing? What is this program that you're throwing me into? And I will say, out of all the coaches that I've been through my Tony Robbins community, through my Mind Valley community, through my own corporate coaches, and as an athlete, my coaches helping me build with my health world and my fitness world, I needed someone to help me with my mind. And thank you, Jennifer, for connecting me with your program and your husband. This has been a gift, and I wanted to share this with my friends as how much of a gift that they were in my life, and in hopes that it would help you in your journey as you excel to your excellence, your Olympic playground. So with further ado, introducing Ryan and Jennifer of Mercury Mind. Their program is transformational, helps me, hopefully it helps you. Okay?
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much for having us here. That's an amazing meetings. All of you, it's actually an incredible event we just saw. So thank you all.
Yeah, can you tour with us always?
Exactly. That's absolutely phenomenal. And I think the perfect segue, I can't imagine how much better a setup we could have had. Erica, Marcia, Dennis, you guys said so many things that I think are really important as we talk to people who are athletes in the corporate arena instead of necessarily in the sports arena. And Candace, you asked earlier, what's that 1% thing that will give you 100%? I humbly suggest that what we're about to talk about today may be that thing. And I promise, when we're going to say, some things may sound like they're too good to be true, but they are true. And the ability to unleash human potential is, I think, grossly untapped. And I think we've discovered some things that are absolutely important for us to realize, because so much of the way that we come at life is through the lens of how do I continue to build and build and build and hone what I have. What we're going to show you today actually is that there's a massive amount of energy in our bodies and in our minds that is working against the energy that we have. So to give a metaphor, it would be like, imagine if the ski racer for your hockey team was going out into their competition with 100 kilos of bricks on their back. That would be ridiculous to us, but that's what we are doing every day. And Olympians obviously have this incredible ability to focus their minds. And for all of us who perhaps have that broader problem space that we talked about, that in the corporate world we have so much to focus on, we think these tools are an incredible complement to a lot of the tools that we traditionally talk about. So just very briefly, I had a 30-year technology career. I was a global executive, a global consultant, public speaker in certain domains, and I was a scientist for that, a geneticist and a molecular biologist. And I literally was successful in all ways from the outside, and yet I was struggling with depression. I was struggling with family falling apart. And so we came to this work because of necessity at some level. We studied many, many disciplines, from hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, somatic therapies. And we think we've discovered, in putting together a lot of the most important parts of those disciplines, we think we've discovered something that has the potential to change humanity, and we're not exaggerating when we say that. So what we've found the ability to do is to rewire the deepest part of our mind to allow the internal braking system that is kind of protect us to effectively turn it off, so that all of the energy and all of the passion, all of the power and creativity is able to flow out into you. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And together with my wife Jen, to introduce yourself in a moment. We founded this company, Mercury Mind. I left my career, an amazing career in many ways, but we are so passionate about the potential of this work in the world that we want to really focus on uplifting women, leaders, entrepreneurs, change makers in the world. And our next step after that would be really empowering youth. Because if you can unblock people and unleash people's potential early in life, imagine the exponential change in life trajectory and contribution that can happen instead of unlocking people who are only so long already, which is still a wonderful goal. So with that, Jen.
Briefly, I'm Jennifer. You can call me JLove, many of my friends do. And I also was in tech for many years, working in fact with Ryan. And my focus was on software experience design. So I was really focused on what is the experience, how are you getting to your goals, how easy is it? And now I've transitioned into life experience design. So again, it's very similar, except now we're talking about our entire life, because it's one thing to have an objection, but the experience of getting to what it is that we want is also part of our lives. And then when we get there, being able to really enjoy it is also part of it. So when Ryan and I work together, we work, every client we work with, we both work with them. So he works with them on switching things off. I work with them on getting clear on what it is that really brings them that joy that they want to be pursuing.
Beautiful. Good. So this is an experiential masterclass, which means that you are expected to participate. We are going to hopefully give you a few ocean moments, a really different understanding of how your mind works, and like this is something that is way beyond limited beliefs and mindset. Like we're going to show you something truly amazing. Also, we want to give you some tools, actually how you do the things we're going to talk about today for yourselves. We want to make sure that you leave here. Especially, we want to focus a little bit today on overwhelm because we know who here is not having overwhelm. Oh, no hands, didn't expect that. Oh, good, excellent. So we have one non-overwhelmed person, the Olympic champion. Because the rest of life is easy.
Sorry, I misheard it. I thought it was experience.
Missing overwhelmed. Oh, even better. Right. So we're going to focus a lot of what we talk about today through the lens of that because we know it's useful and powerful. And obviously, we want to make sure that you guys have a felt experience. And if somebody's willing, we would love to actually practice some of the work in a live coaching experience. So if anybody feels like they'd love to have our techniques unpack some of what's going on for them, and you're willing to do that, start thinking about that now. If not, we'll demo it together in front
And you will
of you.
get to sit on this lovely couch.
And yeah, the couch is that's the bonus. Okay, so experiential masterclass. Let's start experiencing.
Okay, so go ahead and just close your eyes. And I'd like you to just feel into your bodies. And I don't want you to change anything. Just notice right now how you're feeling. Notice any thoughts that are in your mind. Notice any emotions. Notice your breath. Notice your heart rate. Notice how your muscles are feeling. Okay? Good. Now, keeping your eyes closed, I want you to remember a time when you were at your peak, when your own Olympic mind was fully unleashed, unlocked, when you were in flow. Maybe it was a moment when you were presenting and you knew you were nailing it. Maybe you were writing something or creating something. Whatever it was, I want you to tap into that, looking through your own eyes, seeing where you are. And how are you feeling now? What thoughts are in your mind? What emotions are running through you? What do you feel in your body? Notice your breath. How are you breathing? What is your heart doing? How quickly is it beating? How does it feel? Notice your muscles. And with that, you can come back into the room, to the moment, and I would love to hear, just popcorn style, what did you notice? Can you just describe, anybody just shout out one word that you experienced? Was there a difference between those two moments?
Flow.
Flow. Any others? Elevate. Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you. Awesome. So, today we call this talk the Olympian mind, not mindset, because as I said before, the mindset is often understood about as thoughts and ways of thinking. We heard Erica talk about the voice in our head, the thoughts that are in our head. Absolutely. What we're going to show you is something that's below and beneath all of that. And by working there, we have the power to absolutely change our bodies and minds. So as leaders, I'm carried on. At some point, Jennifer said, I think she's a plant. Like, they're going to think she's a plant, because what I intended to say right now, you actually covered beautifully, right? Which is, while a lot of times the Olympian mindset we might think about as being that ability to push through boundaries, et cetera, and that's absolutely super inspiring and important. The reality for most of us out in the world is that we are playing multi-dimensional, multiplayer chess, where we have multiple opponents and multiple partners on the chessboard with us. That's not necessarily the same game as every athlete is playing. And so what we want to really talk about is the importance of going beyond what is often recommended in coaching circles as the how do you break through, the friction's the fuel. Actually, that's a very if you will, reductive way of playing your life, because friction isn't fuel, friction is just friction. Like, actually, and fear is not fuel, it's friction. And these things are pulling back from us being able to use our energy fully in the world. So we want to talk about today, is the theme I'm hearing from lots of CEOs and executive leaders that I talk to, that I work with. It's like their companies are overheating. They are dealing with things they've never seen before. The AI revolution is here, and nobody has a playbook for it. Every pundit out there is telling you what's coming next, and it's all a bunch of bull and people are just making it up. Nobody can even find time to think with all of this overwhelming information coming towards them. And in that environment, what do we need? We need clarity, we need decisiveness, we need the ability to make decisions that are really complex. But what happens, obviously, when we're experiencing overwhelm and when we try to push through it, is we're actually creating for ourselves a situation that's untenable. Because actually, I'm sure any of you will be familiar with psychological research that's done for over 20 years that shows, like, when we experience sustained overwhelm, stress, anxiety, we actually have up to 20 points lower IQ, cognitive processing ability. Our memory capacity might be up to 40% less. Working memory capacity is how we make complex decisions. We have to be able to hold many things in our minds at the same time. And yet, stress and anxiety are reducing that by 40%. So we are here to talk about how we actually release the experience of overwhelm from our bodies and from our minds, so that we have access to our full mental capacity, even in the midst of these incredibly complex games that we're out there playing. Okay? We think that's a really important addition. Right? So the method we're about to describe, we've been working with for over 5 years, and truly has the power to dissolve stress and anxiety so that our full selves can flow out into the world, our full creativity. And with that, we're going to talk a little bit about how we understand overwhelm and how we help people kind of guide their way through it.
Yeah. So I think everybody in the room already confirmed that you are well familiar with the experience of overwhelm. And overwhelm is kind of like the kryptonite of the Olympic mind. It's the exact opposite of being in flow. And it feels like once you've gotten into it, if you think of a moment, you've gotten into it and you're like, oh my God, how did I get here? And now what do I do? And actually, the good news, it sounds like bad news, but the good news is that we actually created it. Our own minds have created overwhelm. And with a minute slide, and it's really a two-part process. So overwhelm is not just a state, it's a process that we are typically now, of course there are black swan events, there's COVID, there are different things that we are not creating or contributing to. But when we find ourselves systematically in a state of overwhelm, it's probably pretty predictable that we've created it in some way. And so when you break it down, and the reason I'm telling you, there's a lot of information on overwhelm. My goal in here isn't to tell you yet again, you need to prioritize better. You need to focus on what it is that you truly want and make decisions based on that. If knowing that were enough, we'd already be there. What I want to do is I want to break it down, because once we understand exactly what's going on and how we're systematically creating it and responding to it, that's when we can then go and in a focused way systematically dismantle what's contributing to this state of overwhelm. And what it looks like for Marissa is different from what it looks like for Ryan, is different from what it looks like for Matt, Haas, for me. We all do it differently, but it is a process. And so there's the first part, which is how we create it. And that can follow some common patterns. So I want you to just notice as I go through this, if any of these are familiar for you. So common ways we create overwhelm. Essentially, we're getting ourselves into a situation where we have more to do than we can effectively execute. So people pleasing, saying yes, not wanting those difficult conversations with no, or there's a more subtle way we might not notice, right? We're going to be talking a lot about unconscious behaviors, and one of those unconscious behaviors is tied up in identity. I'm talking about identity today. So like, I'm the person, I'm the provider, I have to go out. If I don't take care of my family, who will? And that can start to feel like you don't have a choice, right? So there's these creepy ways that we don't always see coming that we're actually creating the situation. And then there's this compulsion one, the FOMO. So we had a client who he was taking on every opportunity, super talented guy taking on every opportunity that came his way because he had this deep, deep fear. It was a compulsion, and he would say, oh, well, if I don't take it on, maybe I won't get another. And so there are different ways that we do this. Maybe it's always going out, but it's something that is operating often without us being aware.
And for leaders, the thing that we also mentioned here that I've been hearing a lot recently, and especially among women leaders, is this notion of needing to stay relevant. Again, it's not just for women, but in this fast-moving time, right? This I have to stay relevant is this new form of FOMO. It's not even just missing out. It's like I'm in danger, actually, or I'm not going to be valuable anymore if I don't keep up with all the things that are happening in all this.
Okay, so now we found ourselves in this beautiful situation, and then there's how we respond to it. So we create situations, right? Like Erica was talking about, she's in the ultimate high performance, high stress situation, but how is she responding in that situation? She's like, I'm in a state of joy, I'm in a state of flow. But when we're in a state of overwhelm, so she's trained herself to respond, she's tapped into this thing to respond in that way, but that's not what most of us are experiencing. Most of us are experiencing the exact opposite. So we have, what comes with that is a stress and fatigue, which is draining our energy. Often we respond by resisting, procrastinating, right? I'm talking about dragging that bag of bricks, just trying to get yourself to do something, which then is draining our time, contributing to the stress. And then all of that kind of makes this fuzzy mess in our heads where we're not able to prioritize, we're not able to deal with a situation. So with that, I'm gonna have you close your eyes. And I would like you to remember again, this time, a moment when you were in it, when you were overwhelmed. And if it's something that's going on now, maybe there's something now, even better, or a time recently, if you can, when you really had that feeling of being overwhelmed, of maybe there was something that felt really, really hard and you dreaded doing it, you didn't want to do it, or it felt impossible. And I want you again, drop into your body, look through your own eyes, look around. What are you thinking? What thoughts are in your head? What emotions are you feeling? Notice your heart, your breath, and muscles. Okay, you don't need to stay there. You can come back out. But I just want to hear, like, did you notice a difference? Who noticed a difference? Who could feel a difference in their body between that first memory? Yeah? Any words to describe what was that like?
Tension.
Tension? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. So let's see. We're going to talk about what is really going on here. So I think one of the things that I do want to point out is that you notice that in both cases, all I did was ask you to remember something, and your body responded differently, right? This is really important as we go forward in what we're going to share with you.
Fantastic. So we didn't want to keep it to the end for the big reveal, so we're just going to tell you what we're going to tell you. I don't know if any of you are consultants, but we have an old song, consulting, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So we're going to try to use our master consultant by West Consulting Findings here. So what we want to talk about is that most mind performance is advice, in our opinion, is actually pretty far off the mark. Not because it's not useful, but because it's not nearly as useful as what we're hoping to share with you today. Some of it, though, is actually kind of what we're doing. So we started to talk about this. You know, we don't believe, when you start to look through the lens of what we're going to explain to you in a moment, you'll see that I don't believe we actually lack courage or discipline or decisiveness. These are all very abstract words that describe self-judgments, actually. They talk about what we're not doing. We are taught that we need to work really hard, to build our tiny habits and work bit by bit because it's so hard to make big change. Again, those tools are useful, but I think we're being undersold something, which is big change is actually possible much faster than we think. And in fact, I don't think it's really helpful to push through the feeling of anxiety and overwhelm if you could turn it off. Would that be useful? If you could just turn it off? Or would you all prefer to have to fight through it? Right? Kind of obvious. And so I think that what's important to start to feel, and this is what Jen just said is really important, to start to feel into our bodies. Our bodies are giving us clues all the time about exactly how they resist. So the truth is that your mind is actually silently working against you. It's putting on the brakes. And while you're stepping on the gas consciously, a deeper part of the mind is constantly putting on the brakes. And the reality is it's simply trying to protect you. The problem for us is that the programs that our mind uses to protect us started to form from literally the moment we were born. Some people might even believe they're inherited from before that. I don't know the truth or not of that, but it's very common that people have that experience. The important thing to realize is that your mind is using programs that are not as sophisticated as your conscious awareness is right now. All of the time we've spent studying, training, working with our teams, learning about our business, none of that is the bulk of what our brain uses when it protects us. It uses experiences that were happening when we were very young and when we had very little power. We actually were powerless and we had very little capacity to figure out how to solve our problems. But the amazing thing is those programs, your brain knows exactly where they are, and it's actually possible and quite easy to turn them off. So just as a basis for what we're going to talk about, does anybody here, I'm sure you've all heard of the subconscious or the unconscious mind. Anybody here not know what I'm talking about? Okay, good. So what I just want to cover is a couple of the details of these two parts of the mind. So we often talk about it as the rational mind. What we identify with is this frontal cortex, the mind that does our thinking. When you hear yourself thinking, that's this part of your mind, you're making decisions. And then the deep part of the mind. So we've chosen to talk about it as the deep mind because truthfully the subconscious, there's a lot of argument in science about whether the subconscious is the lower brain stem or exactly what part of your mind is it. And really, we're pretty sure it, in all practical terms, is your entire body. In fact, again, the emotions and the feelings you had when you went into memories were in your whole body. So from a practical point of view, the mind is quite deep. And the thing that is really important for us to understand is that each of these parts of the mind does something totally different. And again, depending on what your background is and what you've heard and experienced, some people might think of the deeper subconscious mind as an inconvenience. It's where all the dirty emotions are, it's where sadness is, whatever. And the rational mind is this awesome thing that can conquer the world. But the truth is that the rational mind is simply an analytical mind that allows us to make decisions and process information in a very clear way, but its actual capacity is very, very limited. Some of you might have heard that we can only hold between 5 and 7 things in our working mind, which is the rational mind, at the same time. Yet the deeper part of our mind is the part that holds our memories. And it holds the entire experience of our lives. And it's able to constantly run our body, beat our heart, digest our food while doing other things. In fact, it can do very complex things. Who here has ever driven home and not known how they got there? Yeah, everyone, right? But that's actually, I want you to start to notice that that is actually how we live most of our lives. Because the deeper part of your mind is connected to your senses first. When you think I'm seeing right now, I'm seeing a house, but that's only because my mind's choosing to let me know that. I could also, you've probably had an experience where you hear one person, but you can't hear the person in front of you, right? Your deep mind is filtering all of your senses before it makes you aware of it. And it also has control of all your muscles, right? I can't wave to you consciously. There's 120 something muscles in my arm. I'm not actually waving consciously. All I did was send a message, wave to the crowd, and my body went and did this for me. That's how you drove your car as well. Your car's watching the road, knows where it's going, knows how to be safe, knows how to get home, and it gets you there. Ever notice that sometimes you also don't know like why you forgot to take a turn? Because when you're in a new place, your unconscious mind knows how to drive your car safely, but may not know where to turn. So it just drives you safely. Now, that's incredible that your mind can do all that without you being aware of it. But what's important is that it's doing a lot of decision making, actually, which are not rational. That doesn't mean they're wrong, right? So many of us might have started to believe in this idea of irrationality is a problem. And when I teach people some of the fundamental tools that we use, I often ask them, like, why do people make irrational decisions? And the answer is because it's actually the only, like I ask actually, why do people behave irrationally, which is more correct? And people will give me answers, and I'll say, because it's the only way you can behave. Behavior, all behavior, when you speak, when you move your mouth, everything's coming and directed by your unconscious or deep mind. So the beautiful thing, though, is that these two minds do totally different things. This is a relational mind that holds all your memories, and it knows how things connect to each other. This is the mind that can make decisions by evaluating and drawing conclusions. Remember, very important, the number one job of this mind, though, is to protect you. And if it has any doubts about whether there might be danger, it will act first, because it is the actual controller of all action. And what's really important here, research has shown that this part of your mind actually responds without your awareness 85 or more % of the time. If you take anything away, this might be the single most important thing to realize, is that when you're using conscious mind tools to increase mind performance, if you're lucky, you're working on 15% of your mind's capacity and awareness. 85% of your mind is happening automatically without your awareness. I suggest it's incredibly important to learn how to reprogram what this 85% part of your mind is doing, and in fact, even learn how to take control of it, because no matter how much consciousness any of us build in a lifetime, we're only going to shift this number down a small amount. So, just key facts but please take a picture of this stuff. First job of your deep mind is to protect it. Second fact is that it's going to respond without your awareness 85% of the time. So what does that mean for how we interpret what's going on around us? First thing that we see all the time in the corporate world or in life in general, we're saying, why do people say one thing or think one thing and they behave differently? Right? Because our goals and our aspirations, the things we decide we want, those are not directly translated. Our beliefs, our values, they are not directly translated into action. The deep mind controls action, and it will do whatever it feels like it needs to do whenever it feels like it's not safe. Now, what I'd love you to start to feel into, what Jen did with you earlier is an example of this, to start to notice that there are fundamentally, we can boil almost everything in our lives down to two forces that are operating inside. One is this force of desire, the will. The first memory that you got into when you were motivated, you could feel it. Probably was in a different part of your body, actually, than the second memory. And you can feel the difference of an energy that's trying to propel you forward. And everybody have some experience like that when they're motivated, that feeling, that flow. And then in the second memory, you noticed a whole other set of forces. Forces that probably felt like they were moving inward. Right? Maybe they were constraining you, maybe they were weighing you down, right? So we talk about this as the force of self-protection. The reason why this is so important is that this force of self-protection is the brakes that are constantly being put on. So we have a thing, we might call it the will, but also we might call it love, we might call it joy, we might call it flow. All of these words are describing the same force, which is our fundamental essence as an individual human, trying to come out into the world and be creative and be collaborative. And then we have this force of self-protection, which you may experience as fear and holding us back, but we also have language associated with it. We say things like, well, I can't do that, or I shouldn't do that, right? That language isn't a belief the way we've been taught, nearly so much as it's a reaction to the feeling in our body that says, I can't move. Just as an example of this force, like, I don't know how many people here have had a challenge speaking in front of a group, for example, but you may have felt when the first time you did that your throat closed, you felt a little tension in your chest, right? Your unconscious mind, your deep mind has decided there might be danger, and it physically closes your body trying to stop you from speaking. Or maybe you didn't speak in a meeting. Maybe it just held back. And then later, your rational mind looks at that and says, how did you do that? Like, why did you not open your mouth? You have this really important idea. You must not think you're good enough. You must not think it's the right idea to speak at that time. You want to talk over your colleague. But that's your rational mind trying to figure out how to explain, because that's his job, is to explain things. But the reality is there was a force in your body that actually happened first. And I want you to start to notice that force in your body, because that's the actual thing that's occurring inside us.
So this is a video that I took on a family vacation in Mexico a few years ago. And I want you to, so you can see the water, it's right there. But she was gonna jump. She was so committed. Look at her. Oh, she's, okay. She's psyching herself up. She's gonna do it. She's gonna do it. I took 12 of these videos right in there. 12. Okay.
Imagine. So here's a conscious decision. Maybe some of you have had this experience. I had it when I was a kid. Like, conscious decision, I'm gonna do this, and then go to move, and your body is just like, fuck that, not doing nothing. Not moving them legs. I don't know if, I've had the experience personally as powerful as if my head was trying to move and my body's just like, no, we're not going anywhere. Now, the opposite side of this is actually what we call muscle memory, right? Like, athletes will tell you that they are not consciously skiing or playing basketball. They're consciously thinking about strategy, but their bodies know how to do that work. Well, your body knows how to do everything in your life, including move your mouth and make it safe and easy. That's what we're trying to create awareness of, is how powerful that part of your body is. It isn't memory, and memory is not in your muscles, but don't we say muscle memory, it's actually in your nervous system. And it can move your muscles. So what we wanted to highlight here is that the rational mind, although it's very powerful, it's generally wrong about the root cause of why we behave the way we do. It's the source of self-judgment and negative self-talk, because it's busy trying to interpret what the deeper part of our mind is doing and trying to make reasons for that. So when you ask yourself, why do I do this? Why didn't I speak in front of this group? Why do I keep saying yes and killing myself? The answer that your rational mind will give you is almost certainly wrong. It's plausible, but it's wrong. And that's important because that's why it's so hard to consciously change our mindsets. That's why it's so hard to consciously change our behaviors, because we're operating on words that aren't actually the source of what we mean. Real secrets move on.
Yep. Why is a red herring? It's not going to take you to where the answer is. So that example of the woman not jumping off of the cliff, is an extreme illustration of what we're talking about the way that our own minds are holding us back. And maybe it's actually a good thing, right? It stopped her, it kept her safe, it protected her from jumping off of a cliff. But our mind is doing this. It's scanning all day, every day, looking for danger and ways to protect us. And the way it shows up in everyday life is a lot more subtle than this. So, slide. So it shows up in ways like self-distracting. I know I need to deal with my finances, but I think I'm just going to check my email a few hundred more times. Or, I really want to go to bed, but I just feel like I can't do that. I have to go have coffee and so you wear yourself down more. Or it looks like, I should send that proposal, but you know what? I'm gonna go take a break. I'm gonna come back to it. I'm gonna look at it one more time. Oh, got distracted. A whole day passes. So any of that sound familiar? So it's very important, but if you start to really pay attention, we can start to find the pathways in our bodies. So I asked you to tune in earlier to your body and notice, and this sort of physical awareness every day is what we want you to start paying attention to, so that we can then go ahead and dismantle.
Yeah, then just to put a fine point on this, like procrastination, not a defect, not a personality flaw. Procrastination is your mind not wanting to engage with something and making it turn. People pleasing, not because you're the only one who can do stuff, it's because your body has learned a program that says, better I say this. All of these are old programs that are playing. And we'd suggest that almost everything that gets in your way of success actually is a self-protection response that's coming from within you. And so we want to show you how we think the deep mind really works. And I want to say humbly, so I'm a scientist by training, and the definition of science is actually observing the world and building models that we can use to predict things. That's how we build skyscrapers. Unfortunately, science has sort of become about being right. So people ask me like, oh, do you see that latest neuroscience, whatever book called? What I'm about to tell you may or may not be exactly true, and I don't like it. Because the model we're about to show you produces incredible unlocks for people every time. And so I don't actually care if it's exactly correct, but I want to say that because oftentimes people say, well, I heard this other thing. That's fine. Like if anyone is interested in getting the results, this model is very, very powerful. We said 85% of the time. What I want to tell you is that emotional energy that you felt in your body, that emotional energy is directly driving your behavior. It's not thoughts. That emotional energy in your body, when your mind senses and scans and says there might be danger, it basically activates its self-protection mechanisms thanks to the emotional energy that it's stored throughout your life experiences. And so while we're talking that we have these life experiences and then that makes up meaning and beliefs, and that when we have a triggering situation, we decide what the situation means and we react. I got mad at this person because they did the following thing. But what we think is actually the reality, certainly what predicts the kind of experiences we have, whether they be procrastination, overwhelm, reactivity, or self-limitation and self-doubt, is a triggering situation happens and your mind fundamentally says, is there a need to protect her? And it's wrong most of the time. But remember, its number one job is to protect her, and it takes that job very, very seriously. So it is going to react if it has any doubt, which means it's going to produce some behavior that doesn't serve you. And then after the fact, your rational mind tries to make sense and starts to form what we traditionally call meaning and beliefs. We talked earlier about identity. We're both really clear about the identity of that. Even here, identity as we typically talk about it. So she mentioned this our ego death, right? But those terms are important, but they're actually rational constructs that we've created around ourselves. And we've had the experience of having clients' entire ego death and identity shift happen in days without pain to be associated. Because what's underneath all of this new is actually emotional energy. Now, what's powerful is that we think we've made some discoveries on the backs of giants that we studied with. We don't have like a single traumatic memory that's driving our experiences. We actually have a network of memories that our mind, remember our deep mind is very relational. If you think about your childhood home, you probably instantly have different memories in your childhood home, different ages, right? Because your mind has this ability to quickly say, what's related to childhood home? And it goes and it presents this. The same thing seems to be true with behavior when we procrastinate, when we have these kind of reactions that feel like overwhelm. The mind is basically looking into its store of memories, and it's trying to figure out what's the probability here that there's a problem, or which program should I run. It's not just the problems, it also can drive your car. But it's going to go and look and see. And we don't have any conscious awareness of this. This happens instantaneously. But what's really important that we think that what we've discovered that's really valuable is given that this energy gets consulted and then it drives the behavior, it literally seems to be the emotional energy that's stored in the memories of these experiences. That thing you could re-feel in your body when you went to it. that energy seems to be the thing that drives your behavior. Why is this important? Well, because there are certain of these memories, which we call keystone memories, that hold together this whole network. If we work with these memories and we erase the negative energy, and yes, it's very easy to physically erase the negative energy from your body. When we erase that negative energy, we notice the behaviors stop happening instantly. Not after long practice thinking and management of our emotions. The emotional reactions we have disappear from our lives, which means things like procrastination, overwhelm, disappear. Now, what's fascinating beyond this is that your mind, given that it would take some experience, match against these memories and say, boom, this is what we've got to do. We've got to procrastinate. We've got to avoid. We've got to self-protect. It knows exactly how it did that every time it does it. So if you take an experience, like Jen said, when was a moment that you were in a state of overwhelm? If you get into that memory, we can start to ask your mind questions, and it will start to show us exactly which of these memories that are critical to holding all this together, which ones did it use. Notice, we're not analyzing, we're not saying that because you have a certain kind of childhood, this must be the memory that's the problem. What we've discovered is it requires a tremendous humility to let a client's brain just tell us what needs to happen. But what we notice is when we do that and you work with how the brain wants to work with it, it sheds the energy and changes. So you can knock out the energy of these memories before you knock out the behaviors, and people change overnight. Just as a quick case study, our friend Franco, whose name is protected, the guilty or innocent, depending on how you think about Franco. Franco was literally having like crash and burn level burnout. Actually, he's a person that some of the folks that we don't even know. And he was literally this entrepreneur. Jen highlighted earlier that this entrepreneur was always taking stuff on. And he was in tech, had a lot of contacts, a really amazing guy. And so naturally he had all these opportunities coming his way all the time. And he couldn't evaluate them. And he couldn't actually delegate work, so he kept bringing in opportunities, and then he was overwhelmed because he couldn't manage all the opportunities that he had at his table. Needless to say, they were all of the same value to him or to others, but he had what he would have said as we started to talk through his life experience. He'd start to say, hey, look, if I don't do it, I'm the one who would do it. I'm only valuable if I do everything myself. If it stops, everything falls apart. This one I love. Anybody here actually feel like this? Rest is irresponsible. These are all ideas. And they all come from these deep energies that he was experiencing. And the thing that was incredible is that when we asked his mind to go back and discover the early memories that were powering this, a lot of what we discovered, one of the examples that stands out for me is that his dad was a taxi driver when he was young. And his dad also had a habit of drinking quite a bit, and so it didn't always work every day. And there was a table in the entryway of their house. And when Franco would wake up, he would walk by their table, and if there was money on that table, then the family was okay. And Dad had worked the night before and paid some money. If it wasn't, he knew what was coming that day. There was going to be fights between his brothers and his father, and there was going to be just a general air of scarcity in the house. And he, in that moment, he started to create patterns of self-protection where he said, I have to do everything myself. I can't trust these people to take care of me. They're unreliable. So I'm going to create this pattern of self-protection. And I have to take everything I can get when it comes by because I never know if the money's going to be there. So whenever, and again, this isn't rational. These are connections that this deep mind told us it had made. So that in life, somebody would show up and say, hey, I've got an idea for you. And he'd be like, okay, I've got to take it. Right? I've got to work with this person. So what we'd like to do now is we'd like to show you how this works. All right? Is there anybody in this room who would love to volunteer, had remembered feeling that overwhelmed and would like to see what their mind thinks is the real limit? Yeah, so what you just demonstrated is what we're talking about, which is the actual connections our minds make between situations may not always be completely obvious, yet we find every time that there are these keystone memories, like that moment with your dad, and feeling like there's a kind of violation of not being listened to, or he told you you did something wrong when you didn't do it. And once you go backwards, it's plausible why that is connected, but it wasn't obvious. The important thing is if we went back obviously we don't have time today, but if we went back and we erased the energy of feeling violated in that early moment, and we asked our mind to release the connections and the energy all the way back to the present, the next time we were in that situation, if that worked, it would feel absolutely wrong and not painful.
Well, I think the through line, and now that I'm thinking about it, is unfairness.
Yep, there you go.
So the case, I won't get into it.
Yep. No, of course.
It was settled, but it was completely unfair.
Exactly.
The reason I didn't make the tea was totally unfair.
Yes.
And
You got it.
yeah, and basically it was the golf team, basically. So like,
Perfect. But I can feel you noticing, right, is the through line. Now that you think about it, actually you can feel it. You can feel the sense of the emotion is the same in each case, even though at first the words were different because over time we just judged our moments differently.
okay.
That's the power, is that chain of events that came up are what we call the keystone memories. They're the ones that when we erase the energy, the current experience of overwhelm disappears or it becomes drastically lower. Sometimes we do it more than once, it gets to zero. But that perception about that case being unfair is emotionally charged, not because it's actually unfair, but because of all the energy that's stored in your body in these memories. And when we erase that, that's suddenly your mind's like, well, okay, it's unfair, what can I do?
Right.
In that, the power of that is that in given moments when we're feeling overwhelmed, like we said, we don't have awareness of all our options. But suddenly, once that energy is gone, our perspective widens. And we're just like, oh, wait, I could actually solve this problem this other way. But my brain had to narrow it into this one experience. And so the relevance of this is unbelievable, not just for not feeling overwhelmed when you're facing something, but also incredibly relevant for then noticing there are even better options on the table. Like we literally just worked with a client who was really struggling she was thinking she'd done a PhD, she wasn't happy with the experience that she had, she couldn't go back to her PwC job, and she was trying to get her boss to respond to her and see if she could get her job back, and she was just really feeling down and like, I don't even know if I really want to do this, but and I don't want to keep bothering him because then he's going to feel like I'm desperate, I'm stuck. After doing the work that we did 3 days later, she was interviewing at Harvard for a postdoc, and she was thinking about starting her own company and never going to consulting. In 3 days. And it's persistent. We just talked to her last night.
Yeah,
Got the message yesterday.
She got the postdoc at Harvard. She's super excited. Now imagine going from a place of I'm so stuck and I'm so feeling shitty about like I don't even want to keep reaching out because people think I'm losers. To literally, this audio I'll never forget. She was just like, oh my God, like, I am powerful. I can see it now. I have genius. I thought I was being not seen, ignored in my old job. But actually, I could totally see now that, yeah, I was a woman, she was working in the Middle East. So yeah, she was being held down, but she wasn't being ignored. She had decided that she was not valuable. And yet, she knew the whole time she was valuable. And boom, when we took that off, everything changed. So that's the real power of this work, is that your brain knows what's actually happening, how it's creating any situation, any self-limitation, any experience of negative emotion in your body. Your brain knows exactly which life experiences in you are causing it. And for that, it can backtrack and then we can cause change. So this is why the work we do, we actually guarantee it financially. We're like, we'll talk about what you want to be different, and if it's not, I'll give you your money back. How many coaches or therapists have you ever heard give you money back if they don't give it to them? Because the process that you just described is truly so systematic, it never misses. Like, we're not going to agree on something that we can't do, we'll help you understand that, but whenever it comes to this kind of experiences and behaviors that are limiting, like, I guarantee in a week we could solve it. Guarantee. And that's exciting, and I hope that doesn't sound arrogant, because...
So now can you talk to the men's Canadian team to make sure that they win today's game?
Yes. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Well, hey, hold on. Thanks, actually. Marissa, I'm going to tell the folks something. So remember we talked about this earlier. I just want to say, imagine how when you take away all this negative energy, which is that self-protection, imagine how as the fire force explodes. But the one thing that is also true, our bodies are incredibly complicated. Sometimes this negative energy, we heard it from Eric, sometimes this negative energy can be channeled into what appears to be motivation and intensity. For athletes, frequently, anger and other things can be channeled into intensity, but not for long periods of time, but they don't need it to be for long periods of time. We, in the complex world we live in, don't do well when our negative energies are creating motivation. The thing that I do say to people when I work with them is, say, hey, if you're a super high achiever, there's a good chance that a component of your motivation is coming from fear. And if we erase that, you will have to rebuild how you motivate yourself at some level, because we actually had a client who like called me after we did work together and he said, dude, I used to be the life of the party. I'm sitting here for the third time, you know, with a bunch of people, and I'm just sitting on the couch. I used to be the one that everybody paid attention to. I was the center of life. What the hell did you do to me? And I said, wait a second, like, did you forget how to get up and be charismatic and be the center of the party? He said, I don't know, I'm just sitting. I said, well, are you enjoying sitting there? He said, I've seen more people dynamics and I've learned more about these people that I need to work with than I have in 5 years sitting on this couch. And I said, well, that sounds good. Now, go give it a try and see if you can be Mr. Charismatic. And he came back and he was like, I can't forget it. But what happened was his body, as a safety mechanism, used to throw him out into the stuff. And that's the thing, is that we talk a lot about self-limitation, but for a smaller segment of people, actually jumping out in front is the safety mechanism. And the world rewards that.
He said, I used to be a dancing monkey.
That's how we call it.
Now I'm
real
not a
life.
dancing monkey.
Yeah. And so that's the only thing about the hockey team, is I appreciate you saying this, because it's nice to say. When it comes to high performers, I'm like, look, don't only do this if you're ready to really discover who you are, like you want, because there is a bumpy path sometimes as you turn off the tap of the raw energy. It's not always easy. So
I have this belief now at this point that many of our social ills are driven by this fear, this fear mechanism.
Yep.
Because when people clear this out of their bodies, they're fundamentally generous, generative, and empathetic. And so it makes a big difference in the world. And the people that we've been unleashing are going to go out and make a ripple of impact. So this is really why we're doing this.
They are, yeah.
This is our mission.
Yeah. But like,
Thank you.
you want to change
Thank
the
you for
world.
staying late.
So
For being here.
please get in touch with us if we can help you, or if you can connect us up with people.
Yes.
No,
Now, can
I can ask one question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why is, so you're based here, is that?
we're based in north of Milan, yeah. Why is that?
No, it's because I was looking at the business cards and then the number, it
Yeah.
looked like a North American number, and it was like, oh, so
One outcome of this work is that I went from being a depressed, actually suicidal provider in tech land in San Francisco. I suddenly found that it was easy to not be that person anymore, to not want to live in a place that was tense and expensive. And our family rallied around me leaving my career and trying to spread this in the world, knowing that it would take time. And so we wanted to live in a place that is healthier. And the environment where we live north of here, like Milan's a big city, but where we live, it's green, it's between here and the lakes, we swim at the lakes, the food's amazing, and cost of life's lower. And we actually made that choice, that literally in less than a year of doing this kind of work with myself, which isn't the most efficient way to do it. Like, I live in a state, you know, I remember Erica said this sort of feeling like she was like 1,000 feet tall, right? Like, not 1,000 feet, but like I live in a constant state of ease inside my body. Like, nothing bothers me. I mean, literally from practical things, like I left my phone in a taxi a month ago at the airport. And I felt nothing when I recognized that my phone was in a taxi. All I did was start running across the parking lot, and I caught the taxi and I got my phone back, and I never felt anything. And that's amazing, because I feel joy. It's not that I'm not dead inside, but I have no compulsive reactions anymore. But in the big picture, that's why identity, since I just Jen wants to tell a story, I understand, but this is a client we just worked with. This guy grew up in the Ukraine. Literally his family was in poverty, like, and he's making his way, trying to make his way as an investor. Like, this work in like just really weeks shifted his whole identity. Like, how he perceives the opportunities totally changed, how he sees himself, others. The power of this is beyond belief, actually, because so much of what we think is rationally isn't. It's a reflection of energies that have come up, and when you deal with those energies and the negative ones, you move them with precision, beliefs just disappear. This is how I discovered this, because I was not taught this way. I was taught in a very different way that beliefs should be real. And I noticed every time when I would work with people that oftentimes they would literally go from the woman I just described, she's like, you know, I'm not being seen and I'm not being valued, to like, I'm a powerhouse. I can feel it. How do you do that in 30 seconds? And then it stays. That's the thing, it's not permanent.
Yeah, really interesting. It actually reminds me of